Okay, chat. Yeah, we brought pro-vaxxers and anti-vaxxers together to speak a dialogue about the differences and similarities. Sounds like a good video, guys. That sounds like a reasonable take.
Hi, my name is Marissa Gold. I am a parent. I have 2 girls, 10 and 13, and I'm also a parenting expert with my own parenting company, Intuit Parenting.
My name is David Epstein, and I'm a pediatric intensive care physician.
I'm Gary Schliffer. I'm an internal medicine physician.
I'm Bob Sears. I'm a pediatrician. I guess my greatest passion is just to help encourage full, complete, informed consent for vaccinations.
I'm also Marissa. By trade, I am a designer. I am also an activist and a mother.
I'm Melissa Floyd, and I would consider myself an informed consent advocate. I just want to make sure this conversation can be open for people and continue to inform people and to listen to everyone and understand why we each come to our opinion on this.
Okay.
The first statement is, I am vaccinated.
Everybody. Where's everybody? Because
So I actually wasn't fully vaccinated, interestingly. I grew up with 2 parents that were into alternative medicine. So I was not vaccinated as a child, but as I got older, I vaccinated myself.
Well, I was vaccinated as a child, but my last vaccine was about 15 years ago when I returned to college, and I had a severe reaction in that I became arthritic in my hands. Went to many, many doctors, and nobody knew what was going on and why it was happening, and just shrugged like, it doesn't make sense. You're too young to have arthritis. And it wasn't until having kids and sort of digging into my own research for them that a lot of answers started coming up. And I think it's unfortunate that a lot of it is overlooked.
For me, and I'll continue to get vaccinated regardless of the risks, because I've seen too many things on the other side. I've seen kids, come into the ICU and die from being, getting the flu. I've always felt like the risks are far outweighed by the benefits of getting the protection.
Chat, what's really cool these days, chat, is when it comes to science and interesting and very complex topics that takes a lot of time and education, like schooling and books. And what's really fun about technology is that you don't have to do your own research. Some people are, I'm not kidding.
Not getting vaccinated
their job.
Endangers
it's their job to do the research.
I will acknowledge, of course, as a pediatrician, I know vaccines work. I know they give you protection. They vary greatly in what that protection is. It's not like 100% magical shield over you completely. But I do acknowledge there are some vaccines like the measles vaccine and the chickenpox vaccine that honestly, if you don't get those vaccines, you do risk catching the disease and passing it to others.
It's such a complicated topic, vaccines, and you're starting to get micro with each individual vaccine, and definitely the question was talking about the big picture, and I think, if you get micro, probably some of these vaccines.
I think when you're giving kids medication, you have to get micro about it. I don't think it's doing your kids any service to just say vaccines are all made the same and they're all safe and healthy and good for you, that everybody's benefiting from it, because that's false. It's not true.
But we study them before we release them to the public. We study them so we do know they're safe. That's the thing, is we
safe-ish.
Well,
they're
safer.
Being an intensivist, I see the worst of the worst. And so seeing the other side of kids who don't get vaccinated, I saw a kid walk in with meningococcemia, which I haven't seen in decades. He had all 4 limbs cut off. They had to be amputated because it was all dead tissue. You forget how bad things were before we had vaccines.
Yeah, that is not an anecdote. It is an anecdote, but it isn't meant to push an anecdotal argument.
I didn't step forward for that because I don't like the assumption that if a child is unvaccinated, somehow they are of risk to everyone. And also knowing that vaccinated individuals can also be carrying and spreading diseases. I think it's...
Guys, it's simple, guys. It's an anecdote to remind you of a time, and that example is the argument. The example is, back in the days how it was, when people were dying from this bullshit, when people were dying in masses from this garbage, trying to give you a reminder of what that time was by using an example, which is an anecdote, but the argument isn't anecdotal.
Very polarizing to separate the two, as if you're vaccinated, you're totally fine. You're not risking anybody anything. Unvaccinated children don't just have diseases hanging out in their bodies waiting to unload at any moment. Anybody could be spreading diseases, especially things like polio and pertussis that are not completely covered by the vaccine.
I'd do anything to keep my child safe.
Oh my God.
I agree. I don't have kids, but when I think about it, you know, the idea with vaccines is you're protecting all of us. You're protecting the group. You know, there's this idea of herd immunity. And so I think that's why it's really important to talk about, because this is an issue that doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. Because there's people that aren't vaccinated that are sick or have immune issues, or they're too young to get a vaccine, and they count on herd immunity.
I think most people too, like I started out vaccinating my daughter because I believe in all the same things.
I thought it was anti-vaxxer.
That you said. It wasn't until she had a reaction and several reactions that I actually had to look at it differently, where I realized by continuing vaccinating for her, that actually would hurt her. And yet everyone wants me to do it for the population, as if I'm supposed to continue to sacrifice my child for everyone else.
That's not how it works,
there are
lady.
medical exemptions for vaccines. If your child has a reaction and there's concern, I think that's valid. But I think a larger population is using other justifications to not get the vaccine.
Guys, nobody is guilting her into fucking asking her child to be vaccinated so they can carry the population. That's what herd immunity is for. It carries everybody. If you're the one in 100,000, one in the million who can't get, herd immunity is still it's still standing. Like,
you know, a number of families who
it doesn't disappear because her child isn't fucking vaccinated. What the fuck?
To opt out of vaccines because they feel they are just not willing to risk the side effects.
But the side effects are like 1 in a million, 1 in 2 million. Whereas the side effects from the diseases, when I see all these outbreaks and things like that, I'm going to choose vaccines every time.
And that's, I think, right there is the disservice to this conversation.
My brainwashed. You're dumb, dude. You're dumb.
Analysis. And what's unfortunate is how downplayed those risks are. I only started investigating vaccines because I ended up with a kid with an autoimmune disorder. So what does that mean? And instead of finding answers, I found more questions. The 1 in a million is not a real number.
Dude, how the fuck are you against this actual anti-vaccine chat, and you're saying, dude, you're brainwashed. Motherfucker, what happens when fucking polio comes back? What happens when your fucking family is in an iron lung? You know what that is? An iron lung? Some fucking big-ass tank where you have to be in the tank all fucking day to be able to get the fucking pressure, or whatever, to fucking breathe. When you're in their families, this thing is a fucking cylinder, motherfucker. You, oh, maybe I was wrong. Shut up. What is wrong with you, man?
And so the more that is put out, so people think that, no, it's not when you're talking about the different kind of reaction.
How am I fear-mongering it? What the fuck? I don't have to fear-monger you. That was the thing. It's what we have history, it's what we have books, what we have history. I'm not fear-mongering you. It already happened. Fuck, man!
I think the number you're referring to is anaphylactic shock. That anaphylactic shock is, of course, extremely rare. Whereas when you look at seizures from the MMR vaccine are 1 in 3,000.
But again, this creates fear in parents.
We worry that those on your side kind of downplay those.
So my daughter had seizures. Seizures for most people are considered kind of a big deal. You know, when it happens to you, that downplayed element of, well, that's not anaphylactic shock, it's just a seizure. It is just a seizure. But seizures can be dangerous.
I don't think it's an idea of downplay. I think it comes back to what we were saying with the risk-benefit analysis. And I think the data is very clear that the benefits of giving vaccines by far outweigh the risks. So I don't think it's a question of downplaying the risks. They're there. But we also know that children were dying, and now they're not. And yes, there's side effects, but they're not as bad as what we had before vaccines.
True. Any kind of arguments?
I don't always trust my doctor's opinion.
You should never. Dude, what? You don't have to always trust.
Anytime anyone, whether it's a teacher, a friend, something I read online, my mom, you know, the doctor, anytime anyone tells me, oh, you should do this.
Guys, sometimes your doctor is wrong. When it comes down to very complicated stuff, sometimes it's okay to have a second opinion. It's fine.
Especially if it has to do with their health, I'm going to do research. And I would be careful about saying it's that I don't trust my doctor, but that trust has been developed over time. And so I would say in the early years when my children were very young, when they would say, this is what we recommend, yes, of course there were times where I got a second opinion or did the research on my own and asked the questions. And I think that as parents, we have to do that.
Well, it's hard to trust someone who sees your child for 10 minutes twice a year. In the end, parents know their children best. And that little office visit where your pediatrician looks at your child, he does not know your child the way you know your child. So it's really hard for whatever recommendation he's making to be really based and individualized for your kid. So if you were to come to your doctor and say,
wait, so if your kid comes in and they do a test on her arm for allergies, and the kid has extreme allergies to fucking peanuts, say, no. I know Eric. Eric eats his almonds and his peanuts every day. And I know better.
Hey, my child's acting differently after this well visit appointment. Something's wrong. You want them to trust that you have an established relationship and listen to you and hear you and understand that as a mother, just because you don't have the DR in front of your name, it doesn't make your opinion somehow less valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anyone, doctors are fallible and they don't know everything. And I think it's very important, like you were mentioning, to have a really strong doctor-patient relationship. I think that's really hard in today's 10-minute appointment age, you know, it makes it really difficult. But like as a young doctor, I think there's a lot of distrust when it comes to physician recommendations. It sucks because, you know, you spend decades training and learning and your heart is in this place where you want to like be of service to people, and then you're not trusted. But, you know, to answer the question, you shouldn't just blindly trust anyone's opinion, your doctor or anyone.
Imagine, guys, you spend your entire life, okay, getting a bunch of debt from school, 15 years in school, motherfucker, residency, the whole wazoo to be a doctor. You finally show up, motherfucker, you put your suit on, open up your thing, go sit down, motherfucker. I'm about to get my first client, and this fucking witch shows up. And she starts arguing that your opinion is dog shit. Oh my God,
Ironically,
oh my God,
the doctors
oh my
are
God.
the ones that,
Well,
I trust my physicians. My daughter has epilepsy, and in March, she was also diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis. I went to the rheumatologist, and the rheumatologist said, we're gonna put her on methotrexate. And I looked at her, I'm like, methotrexate, that's a chemotherapeutic agent that, you know, kids with cancer get. And she's like, yes, but we use it in a low dose and it doesn't cause harmful side effects. You have to trust me. I said, okay. And I trusted her. And I am so glad that I did. Before all this happened, she was a competitive gymnast. And she used to walk up and down the stairs like she was 90 years old. She couldn't hold a pencil in her hand. Now she's back on the bars, back on the beam, doing things which my wife and I never thought that she would do again. So yes, do I trust my physicians? Yes. Do I question them? Yes. I will say, look, can we do this for her? Can we do this instead? And yes, you know, I can appreciate what you guys have said as far as people hearing you. And I think that's the biggest problem in medicine, is that time is short, clinicians aren't listening, and I think that as a pediatrician, you know, one of the most important jobs that we have is to listen to parents. And I think that if any pediatrician isn't doing that, they're not doing their job.
Smart.
There is too much hostility between the two sides.
There should be. I'm gonna be based and just say there should be, because by being a dumb fuck, you're endangering me and everybody else by being a moron. And if too many dumb fucks multiply and people become dumb fucks, we die.
I don't like it.
I'd rather be hostile than
I want
dead.
us to be able to talk. I want us to be able to have relevant and educated conversations. And I think at the core of this conversation is what is at the core of humanity and being a parent, which is that we all want to do right by our children and we want to lead happy, healthy, and productive lives.
Yeah, I have no doubts in my mind.
This isn't about fucking COVID. This is about vaccine as a whole. This is 1% dead because 1% people died from COVID. No, it's just about vaccine.
How I've come to my decision making on the subject, which has been tedious and thorough, to say the least. I did not expect to go down this path in my life, but I have people who won't be friends with me, who I've had death threats on social media. I might not even be able to send my kids to school depending on how legislation changes because of the way I think. It's insane to me how hostile this has become, and it's not doing a service to research and science moving forward and just the overall dialogues we have in our culture, whatever the subject.
What I think is lacking in this debate or conversation is really compassion from the pro-vax side, or pro-mandate side, I'll say. The people who refuse to acknowledge that vaccine reactions are happening, or that the things that happened to my daughter were connected because maybe it was just a coincidence and I just needed something to pin it on. You are socially isolated. You can be isolated by your family, isolated by the medical community, isolated by society as a whole because they assume you're unintelligent, uneducated, and irrational. I wish there was just more compassion.
All facts?
But no, we don't want to make something difficult. We just want to be acknowledged. My daughter was a victim, and she's being punished.
When I signed up for this, there was a little bit of trepidation coming into this because you do hear things in the media, about the people who are anti-vaccine and the way they respond to physicians, and it is a little bit scary. As physicians, we care about people. There's compassion on the medical community side. We wouldn't do this if we didn't care. But again, I do have compassion for the families that have gone through issues with vaccines, and I have a great deal of compassion for the families that have children die from preventable diseases. There shouldn't be any hostility. There should be discussion. We can always question things. That's how we evolve. That's how we get better. If we didn't question anything, we'd be still in the dark ages. So. Thanks for sharing your story.
Doctor, it's a pleasure, doctor. Because I feel like some of these people, they think that an adverse reaction is something that the people try to hide. Though, dude, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it's the same thing as if, let's say, you get a product to eat, and what up, and it's bad. They're looking for things to make better.